Welcome to the Sober and Happy podcast, where we talk about all things recovery related, how to navigate the challenges that we'll face along the way on our journey towards our best lives, and how we could go from living a life of simply just being sober to a life where we're both sober and happy. Today we're diving into a challenging but critical topic: what to do after a relapse. If you've ever relapsed, you know that sinking feeling, that immediate rush of shame and regret, and the thought of, I just threw everything away. It's that inner voice that starts saying, maybe I can't do this. Maybe I'm just going to keep failing. Maybe I'll never get this right. But let me stop you right there, because that is not the truth. You have not failed. You are not broken. And most importantly, your recovery is not over. In fact, this moment right here and right now, this could actually be the most important turning points in your journey, because what you do next matters more than what just happened. So today, I want to talk to you about how to get back on track after a relapse without all the guilt, without beating yourself up, and without falling into another long cycle of drinking or using. I want to show you how to actually learn from what happened so that you don't keep repeating the same patterns. And I also want to talk to you about something a lot of people struggle with: how to have conversations with family and friends after a relapse. And lastly, if you haven't recently relapsed, this episode is still for you. It'll help you create the insights for the ultimate relapse prevention plan. So buckle up. This is going to be a great episode. Welcome back. So first, let's talk about what not to do after a relapse. Because here's what most people do. They focus all their energy on that one moment when they took the first drink or the first hit or whatever it was. And they obsess over that single event as if it just came out of nowhere. And then they think if they could just avoid that one thing, they will be good moving forward. But here's the truth. Relapse isn't just one bad decision. It's a process. It doesn't happen in one random moment. It builds up over time. That moment when you actually drank or used, that was just the final domino to fall. Let me give you an example I've seen several times. Someone gets back into an unhealthy romantic relationship, whether it's a new one or getting back with the toxic ex. And when it implodes, they end up drinking over it. On the surface, the solution seems easy. Don't date. I am sure that theory created the standard no dating for the first year rule you hear in the recovery community, but that doesn't address anything beyond the surface, and lasting recovery happens deeper than that. The key here isn't to teach you how to not drink after the heartbreak of another toxic relationship. It is to begin to understand why we put ourselves in situations like that in the first place. And most importantly, learn where we need to heal so that we could love ourselves enough to know that we deserve more than that. So instead of beating yourself up over that one moment, I want you to rewind the tape and start looking at what led up to it. It didn't start with the decision to drink after the breakup. So what happened before that? And then what happened before that? Keep asking that question. Now, I don't want you to go through this with a critical mindset looking to judge your decisions. It's better to be curious and investigative. We're trying to solve a riddle here so you don't get fooled the next time. When I go through this exercise with someone, we usually find a series of rationalizations and justifications. We often find moments where they convince themselves that it'll be different this time, but without any proof as to why it would be different. And when we dig deep enough, we find the underlying emotions that drove all of it. Maybe in a lonely moment, you decided to text an ex just to see how they were doing. Or in the fear of being alone forever, you hop back on that dating site that's only led to disaster in the past. The key is to look for patterns and emotions that led to behaviors that instigated the series of decisions that led to the one moment where you decided to drink or use. Because if you could recognize that pattern, you could break it before it happens again. We aren't trying to control the moment right before the first drink, because that is almost impossible. We're trying to stop the train miles back on the track before it builds momentum. In this example, once we recognize the pattern and the next moment of loneliness creeps in, which leads to the thought that it might be a good idea to text that ex again, an alarm will set off in your head. And now this will create an opportunity to pause and ask, what can I do instead? You will still have to make the decision not to act on that moment of loneliness, but now that decision will be made knowing where that path goes, which hopefully will lead to a better decision. And even if in that moment of weakness you still text them and the pattern hits the next stage, say it's them asking to swing by to see you, that alarm bell in your head will ring again even louder. By knowing the pattern, we're going to get warnings each step along the way. This will create multiple opportunities while going down the wrong path to stop, but we will only see them if we first identify the pattern that led to our past relapses. So think back to a past relapse. When did things start to shift? Was there a moment where you started feeling like sobriety wasn't worth it? Were you convincing yourself that maybe you could control it this time? Did you convince yourself a really bad idea wasn't that bad? Were you avoiding emotions that you didn't want to deal with? Maybe you stopped doing the things that were helping you early in sobriety. Maybe you started spending time with the wrong people again. Or maybe you just got comfortable and little by little, the habits that were keeping you on track started slipping away. Whatever it was, I promise you, this relapse didn't come out of nowhere. I want you to take a moment and really think about what changed in the days, weeks, or even months before you relapsed. Start with the relapse and ask, what happened before that? And then ask again, what happened before that? And keep asking that question until we get to the beginning of that pattern developing. Because if you could identify those patterns, you could start building a defense against them. Now, the next thing we need to talk about is how to stop the spiral before it gets worse. Too many people have the mindset of, well, I already screwed up, so I might as well keep going. That's the thought that keeps people stuck in the cycle of relapse after relapse. But please know that one bad decision does not have to turn into weeks or months of drinking. You could stop it now, right now, not next Monday, not after one last weekend of going all out. Right now, because the longer you wait, the harder it gets, and that's just reality. So if you relapse, the best thing you could do for yourself is to cut it off immediately and recommit to sobriety. But this time, take what happened and actually learn from it. You hear the phrase progress, not perfection in recovery a lot after someone makes a mistake. But if we don't change and we just keep making the same mistake over and over again, we only have the not perfection part of that quote down. We have to do something different, change, and improve if we want to claim the progress part. And this isn't about punishing yourself. It's not about making yourself feel guilty. It's about adjusting. It's about making changes so that you don't fall into the same trap again. Think about what you could do differently this time. What needs to change? Do you need to set better boundaries? Do you need to cut certain people out of your life? Do you need to find a healthier way to deal with stress? And if you're struggling to remember why you even wanted to get sober in the first place, go back to your why. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you will know that I talk about this a lot because it matters. If you don't have a strong enough why, if you don't have a reason that means something deeply to you, then when things get hard, it's too easy to quit. So go back and connect to that. And if you've never taken the time to figure out your why, go listen to episode 2 where I talk you through that process. All right, now let's talk about something I know that's really difficult, and that's having conversation with family and friends after a relapse. I get it. If you have people in your life who's been rooting for you, who have seen you doing really well, telling them that you relapsed can feel like the hardest thing in the world. You might be thinking, they're going to be so disappointed. They're never going to trust me again. They're going to think that I'm a lost cause. But here's what I've learned. People respect honesty more than perfection. Avoiding that conversation doesn't make the relapse go away. It just creates more distance between you and the people who care about you. So when you do have that conversation, keep it simple. Own what happened. Be honest. Say, I messed up, but I'm getting back on track. That's it. And here's something really important. Don't over-apologize. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't take responsibility, but I've seen way too many people beat themselves up and grovel for forgiveness when the best thing they could do is to just start taking action. People don't need 100 apologies. What they need is to see that you're serious about making a change. This is also not the time to make promises because honestly, right now, they're probably tired of the broken promises. This is the time to show people that we are changing, not telling them how we're going to change. And look, some people might react with frustration. Some might be upset, and that's okay. Give them time. Allow them space to heal, but don't let their reaction define your worth. Your recovery is still yours. but also don't keep flirting with the endless bucket of second chances. We don't know when our last chance truly is our last chance until it's too late. Although it's important not to beat ourselves up, it is equally important to recognize the potential consequences of each relapse, which is why doing this work is so important. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Relapse is not failure. It's a signal. It's telling you that something needs to change. And if you listen to that signal, if you actually learn from this, then this relapse could be the thing that helps you never relapse again. But you have to make that choice. If you keep trying recovery the same way and are unwilling to make difficult changes in your life, you are never going to break the relapse cycle. So here's my challenge for you. Take out a notebook or open a notes app on your phone and write this down. What were the warning signs leading up to the relapse? What could have you done differently? What will you do the next time those same thoughts creep in? Because if you don't recognize the pattern, you'll repeat it. But if you take the time to really look at what happened, this could be the moment that everything changes. Thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. If you are, do me a favor, grab your phone and text one person you think that might benefit from listening to this episode. That would mean the world to me. New episodes come out each Friday, so I look forward to connecting with you next week. And as always, thank you so much for listening and keep living sober and happy.